The legendary colossal kaiju has been a fan favorite for decades. We're talking about our dearest green Goliath Godzilla. He's the monster known to cause massive destruction with every step. He's even been shown as a somewhat benevolent hero in some stories. From the get-go, one can tell the sheer strength Godzilla holds from his size alone. But did you know that some powers he holds aren't as well known? In this marvelous video, we're taking a deep dive into the hidden powers of the King of the Monsters. Let's get going. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Getting struck by lightning made Godzilla a giant magnet. In the film Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, released in 1974, the Big G faces off with his mechanical doppelganger Mechagodzilla. It was created solely to protect the people from Godzilla's wrath. The Mechagodzilla was made from a nearly indestructible material known as space titanium. Mechagodzilla proved to be Godzilla's equal in battle, since it had its own arsenal of technologically advanced weapons like rockets. In the movie, Godzilla is forced to make a new monster his ally in the fight against Mechagodzilla. So Godzilla teamed up with the monstrous King Caesar and began their hunt for Mechagodzilla. At one point in the movie, Godzilla is struck by lightning, which makes him glow a strange blue. This glow is evidence that Godzilla now possessed the power to attract metal. The final battle scene in the end shows Mechagodzilla trying to fly away in vain just as Godzilla starts to glow blue again. Using his newly bestowed power of literally being a magnet, Godzilla pulls Mechagodzilla towards himself in true Magneto fashion. Godzilla and King Caesar defeat the Mechagodzilla, which didn't go down without a brutal fight. The king of kaijus, poop, has its own powers. Let's acknowledge the simple fact that Godzilla is a giant monolith of a monster, which also means he produces equally mighty turds. This goes for all kaiju. Kaiju translates to strange beasts. Towards the end of the movie, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, which was released in 2019, we see a strange headline. The world slowly adjusts to the idea of coexisting with Godzilla. The newspaper headlines talk about the massive amount of poop that Godzilla produces and how this poop might have a purpose. There lies a lot of promise in the amount of poop Godzilla produces and how it can potentially be used as a source of energy. It's said that Godzilla feeds off of radiation, and in turn, his poop can be used as a significant energy resource of radioactive waste. As most fossil fuels have steadily depleted, biofuel has proved to be a renewable energy source for humankind. It's possible to turn radioactive waste into fuel for energy as well. The energy, nutrients, and metals present in the vast amounts of poop produced by the kaijus definitely have the potential to be transformed into a renewable, cost-effective feedstock of biofuels. Godzilla's Ray of Death. Godzilla is often mistaken for a mutated dragon because of his signature weapon. We are talking about the Big G's classic atomic breath. Godzilla is a prehistoric monster who was awakened and invigorated by decades of nuclear radiation. Godzilla emits radiation and can shoot a deadly beam of concentrated radiation from his mouth. This is his iconic atomic breath. Godzilla's glowing dorsal fins are a tell of an oncoming attack, and he can even adjust the intensity of this atomic ray. The atomic breath can vary from a heated vapor beam to an explosive blast. In the film Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah, Giant Monster's All-Out Attack, which came out in 2001, his atomic breath is shown to be neon blue, but in some other movies it's red. In the movie Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, his atomic ray resembles a fire-breathing dragon as he incinerates an artificial mini black hole. In Godzilla Final Wars, his atomic breath is shown to have precise accuracy as he manages to take aim at kaijus in outer space. In the Heisei series, Godzilla's neon blue atomic breath was replaced by a red-hot beam of radiation instead, which we'll talk about in a minute. When Godzilla finally unleashes his atomic breath at the end of the movie, Godzilla 2014, many agree it is one of the most visually striking scenes in his cinematic history. Beware when the claw glows. Along with its various franchises and many spin-offs, 2 new short films were released in Toho Co. Limited released the CGI animated short film named Godzilla vs. Megalon, which shows a king of the monsters facing off with a monstrous beetle-looking creature named Megalon. In their final battle, Megalon uses several of his beast killer light rays to incapacitate Godzilla. The Big G attempts one of his favorite moves, which is the powerful tail swipe, but Megalon jumps out of the way. After being stunned twice, Godzilla finally decides to unleash his atomic power and begins to glow in ominous blue. Fans hold their breath as they anticipate Godzilla's classic atomic ray to blast from his mouth, but instead, his fist starts glowing and we see him power his punch at Megalon with atomic radiation. Godzilla follows it up with another well-placed left hook that sends Megalon hurtling into fallen skyscrapers. Another instance where we see this pulse punch is in the video game Super Godzilla, in which Godzilla can attack his opponent as his fist glows with blue energy. He then launches himself forward to inflict substantial damage to his enemies. The Burning Godzilla from Hell. Along with his iconic atomic breath, Godzilla is also known to have another type of nuclear power. The king of monsters can charge up to his full capacity and release a nuclear pulse from every bit of his body. Since Godzilla is basically like a living, breathing nuclear reactor, he possesses similar properties. In some variations, he glows his classic neon blue. Godzilla also glows a fiery red in some versions. The glowing red Godzilla actually indicates the instability of his powers in that moment. Just as a nuclear core overheats and begins to melt down, Godzilla can also start overheating. The blast of nuclear energy that results from this overwhelm can be a fatal blow for his opponents. We see an example of this in the movie Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, where the reactor-like overheating eventually kills Godzilla, but not before completely annihilating his enemies. In the movie Godzilla, the King of Monsters, we see Godzilla absorb Mothra's powers. Now glowing a red ember from head to toe, an overcharged Godzilla emits multiple nuclear pulses that kill King Ghidorah and wreak havoc on Boston. When Godzilla starts glowing a sinister red, he's known as Burning Godzilla. The pulses he emits obliterates everything in its wake. Godzilla is capable of regeneration in true amphibian fashion. Godzilla, like the true king of the monsters, displays immeasurable strength and durability. He's shown to be hardly affected by mortal physical injuries and easily stands against traditional weapons. He didn't seem affected by the attacks made by the Japanese self-defense forces and showed resilience to technologically advanced weaponry as well. The Big G even stood against natural extremities, like the time when he survived being completely submerged in magma. He also withstood the crushing pressure of the freezing deep-sea trenches. Godzilla even managed to survive while being in the ground zero zone of an asteroid crash. It looks like even being frozen in ice with his oxygen cut off wouldn't be enough to kill him. In the movie Godzilla 2000, his regenerative abilities are explained. His quick healing may be related to the radiation present in his body. Godzilla's cells, which are called G cells, naturally have regenerative properties. If Godzilla sustains injuries in battle, they don't heal over immediately but take a while. We can be sure that these injuries will be completely healed in time for his next fight. Godzilla's G cells were then used to create other kaijus like Biollante and Space Godzilla. His healing abilities are yet to be showcased in any film, though like in the movie Godzilla Tokyo SOS, he seemed to be recovering from wounds which were inflicted in a previous film. Godzilla can change his size. Godzilla is a kaiju that never stays the same size. The king of the monsters is capable of changing his size according to the size of his foes he's battling at the moment. Though we're yet to catch this size-changing ability in action on camera, fans have noticed how he seems to change his size in relation to the skyscrapers he smashes through. Godzilla is reportedly 40 feet tall, but this is only partially accurate as he continually changes sizes. We see an instance of this in the movie Godzilla's Revenge, which came out in 1969. The film shows us Minya, who's actually Godzilla's son. Minya spends most of his time as a human-sized monster and only grows any bigger if it's needed in a fight. This is evidence pointing to the possibility that all kaijus that are Godzilla species are capable of growing or shrinking themselves. Though we must remember that this movie occurs in a young boy's dream. it could be imagined after all. Like any other living thing, Godzilla is constantly growing and evolving. In the animated movie titled Godzilla, Planet of the Monsters, our colossal kaiju has grown up to be 1,000 feet over the span of 20,000 years. Godzilla the Clairvoyant. Godzilla's intelligence has always varied throughout his history and has been a subject of debate since his creation, while some may assume that his sheer enormity makes up for his pea-brain. This may not really be the case. The original Godzilla film and earlier movies have portrayed him as a creature with simple, animalistic intelligence. As the Showa series proceeded, Godzilla displayed levels of abstract thinking and even self-awareness. He was shown capable of thinking about cause and effect and even made the connection between how his atomic breath could be used to power up electrodes to take down Hedorah. Godzilla can also feel human-like emotions, like in Godzilla vs. Destroyer. We see him mourning the death of his adopted son, Godzilla Jr. But what if we were to tell you that Godzilla also possessed psychic, telepathic powers? In Godzilla vs. Biollante, he seemingly dodges the attacks of the Japanese self-defense forces in a way that is similar to Spider-Man's Sixth Sense. This Heisei counterpart of Godzilla showed some levels of precognition. He even had a psychic link with his son Godzilla Jr. The King of Monsters has also displayed the ability to locate his opponents over great distances, which might be related to his psychic powers. Godzilla rules over land and undersea. In the original Godzilla movie that was released in 1954, Dr. Yamane describes a giant as a being that is in between the transition of an aquatic and terrestrial creature. Even his name is the paragon of the kind of creature that he is. Godzilla's name was derived from the Japanese words for gorilla, Gorira, and whale, which is Kojira. Together that makes Gojira, aka Godzilla. Even his designs were inspired by dinosaurs and alligators. Godzilla spent the majority of his time in the sea and in turn has gills. He's able to walk through the ocean on the ocean floor, and his survival is tipped off by his dorsal fins slicing through the waves. So the King of the Monsters is in fact an amphibian. Staying submerged underwater for long durations does not affect his atomic breath. He can not only breathe underwater, but also fight underwater. In the original King Kong vs. Godzilla movie, the two Goliaths battle each other and end up falling in the ocean. Fans believe that Kong won the fight as he is seen swimming towards the shore. We wouldn't be too sure of this victory, considering Godzilla's water-breathing abilities. The King of Radioactivity. Godzilla's atomic breath isn't the only signifier of his radiation. Like we mentioned, Godzilla was created as a metaphor for nuclear weapons. The nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were still fresh in the consciousness of the people. They coped through art, and that is how the King of the Monsters was born. He is a symbol of atomic war and the consequences of humans playing God with nuclear weapons. Similar to nuclear fission, Godzilla constantly emits radiation. In the movie Return of the Godzilla, we see how his radiation even creates mutations like the monstrous sea louse. His radiation also affects the ocean temperatures. Since Godzilla spends long durations in the ocean, his radiation has also contaminated the water. Godzilla's Heisei counterpart is known to feed off radiation, so much so that he attacked a submarine that was nuclear powered, and he was once healed by a radioactive storm. Though in the movie Shin Godzilla, we are told that his radiation isn't instantly fatal. It does show on Geiger counters whenever he passes through human lands. To go even further, in Godzilla King of Monsters, they say that Godzilla's radiation is actually doing more good than harm. Evidence proves that areas irradiated by Godzilla grow back even more full of life than they once were. Godzilla is a shapeshifter. We see Godzilla go through many transformations in the movie Shin Godzilla. The creature that would be Godzilla eventually lived in the sea. It was a prehistoric animal that was forced to mutate due to all the radioactive nuclear waste being dumped in the oceans. His first stage of evolution is never fully seen in the movie, except for its tail. It is theorized to be a tadpole-like creature reacting violently to the radiation. Shin Godzilla's second form, which is all-out nightmare fuel, eventually makes landfall. It stands on all four legs and visibly struggles to breathe outside of the water, which is indicated by its bleeding gills. The third form stood on two legs and looked more similar to the classic monster that we know of today, but its legs weren't fully developed, and this creature's arms were not growing in their full capacity. The fourth form evolved into traditional Godzilla with even more sinister elements added to him. He finally marches through the city, destroying everything in his path. As he unleashes his atomic breath, his lower jaw splits horizontally, which makes him look creepier. If he would have continued to evolve, it is said that he would have grown wings. The Big Gs Infamous Dropkick. The movie Godzilla vs. Megalon is said to be one of the worst Godzilla movies made, but that opinion could be considered subjective. The movie is classified as it's so ridiculously bad that it's good, and most importantly remembered by fans after all these years since its release. One lesser-known power of the King of the Monsters is his infamous gravity-defying dropkick. In this movie, a hidden civilization that lives under the sea named Seatopia is fed up with continuous nuclear testing being done on land. They unleash the kaiju Megalon to retaliate. Megalon decides to team up with another kaiju named Gigan. Gigan, the space monster, and the beetle-like Megalon finally face off with Godzilla and Jet Jaguar, who is a gigantic robot. Gigan flees as a result of being wounded, and Megalon is disarmed by Jet. While Jet Jaguar forcibly holds Megalon, Godzilla slides down towards them on his tail and delivers a brutal dropkick right in Megalon's gut. Godzilla then punches the air, no doubt admiring his own moves, and busts out a little victory dance. He then does the silly dropkick attack again, which finally takes down Megalon. While the movie itself is considered mediocre, one can't deny the fact that this scene is hilarious. Godzilla the martial artist. We can say without a doubt that Godzilla is the monstrous epitome of strength and power. Fans have seen him toss monsters heavier than him as if they weighed nothing. The final blow was when he threw the kaiju Kumonga clean over the horizon in the movie Godzilla Final Wars. Godzilla is even seen running at high speeds and leaping high into the air. The super dropkick isn't the only trick Godzilla has hidden up his scaly sleeve. For his massiveness, Godzilla is a surprisingly skilled fighter. Did you know that in most of his battles, the King of the Monsters has employed a few professional fight moves? Godzilla seems to be familiar with moves in martial arts such as judo. He also uses boxing and wrestling holds on his opponents. This was first seen during the time of his original Showa series, where he pulled a few martial arts moves. While it may have looked a bit funny, it definitely got the job done. Godzilla has the skill to articulate himself. In the movie Godzilla vs. Gigan, which came out in 1972, we see the King of the Monsters give orders to a fellow kaiju named Anguirus. By this time, Toho had established Godzilla as a heroic figure. The previous movie had shown Godzilla saving a city from the destruction of other monsters. In Godzilla vs. Gigan, Godzilla allies with Anguirus to take down Gigan and King Ghidorah. Both Gigan and Ghidorah are sent by alien cockroaches to destroy Earth. Before the fight, Godzilla and Anguirus are on Monster Island when Godzilla senses the incoming attack. In the Japanese version, the two kaijus communicate via speech bubbles, but the English dubbed version takes it up a notch. Godzilla communicates with Anguirus by actually speaking. When Godzilla uses his psychic powers to sense the alien attack, he says to Anguirus that something funny is going on and that he better check, going even further to say, hurry up. Once both of them reach the battleground, Godzilla warns Anguirus of trouble lurking ahead. These two scenes are the only moments in all of Godzilla's history where he is shown speaking English. In most Godzilla movies, his actions and intentions are predicted by the humans present. Who knows what other languages the Big G can speak? Can Godzilla really fly? Certainly, Godzilla doesn't have wings like some of the other kaijus like Rodan, Mothra, and Ghidorah. We already spoke about how Shin Godzilla's next form would have grown wings if he had been allowed to evolve. While our dear monster doesn't traditionally have wings, he can still fly. Kind of. in the movie Godzilla vs. Hedorah, which is considered to be supremely trippy thanks to its psychedelic imagery. We also see Godzilla employ a clever trick that makes him fly. In his final battle with Hedorah, Godzilla gains the upper hand. While the heinous villain tries to flee, the King of Monsters pulls his most unexpected move, surprising audiences. Godzilla curls his tail underneath him, then uses his classic atomic breath, which he points to the ground and uses it to propel himself backwards into the air. He flies straight towards Hedorah and takes him down. Albeit he couldn't fly very fast, the fact that he managed to fly given his weight was still impressive. Flying Godzilla is a stunt we see for the first time in his 75-year history. The deadliest atomic breath of them all. As fatal as the neon blue atomic breath is, there exists a deadlier variation to it. In the Heisei series, Godzilla's most fearsome atomic breath was the red spinal atomic breath. Audiences first saw this power in the movie Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, in which Godzilla shoots a beam of his atomic breath, which is laced with a lightning-like red spiral. In the movie Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, which came out in 1993, the two monsters battled, and Godzilla was nearly pushed into the jaws of death. Mechagodzilla targeted Godzilla's real weakness, which was his second brain. Fatally wounded and paralyzed, Godzilla was finally aided by Rodan. The Fire Rodan's life energy healed Godzilla's brain. He also acquired the power of the Spiral Heat Ray by absorbing the Fire Rodan's life power. When Godzilla's radioactive powers reach an overwhelming limit, he begins to glow an eerie blue or an ominous red. The red Spiral Heat Ray is the deadliest weapon in Godzilla's arsenal. Godzilla can reverse electric flow. In the movie Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, we see how the mechanical counterpart of the King of the Monsters is built by humans to take him down. While it's a remarkable effort that does manage to inflict damage on Godzilla, it's not enough to kill him. Once the two colossal kaijus face one another in battle, Mechagodzilla shoots two electric cables that bury themselves in Godzilla. The cables then flow with shock waves to slowly electrocute him. Surprisingly, Godzilla manages to reverse the electric currents back to Mechagodzilla, that in turn fries up his switchboard insides in an instant. Marvelous verdict. So here we have all 17 hidden powers that Godzilla possesses. Godzilla is simply an unstoppable force of nature who does as he pleases. Over the years, he's been depicted as a destroyer and a protector, a hero and a villain. Godzilla's ongoing legacy might bless us with many more versions of him, with surprising skills and new powers. After all, it's Godzilla's world and we are just living in it. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thank you everyone and see you next time.